Hello members, good evening everybody. Right, to begin to start the meeting. Can it just be noted that that clock obviously is a bit slower, so we've got a lot to get through to tonight, and I don't intend going home till we've done it, because we're not moving on to any other items. And 8 o'clock England kick off, so we're going to carry on and get this done, all right? As regards any emergencies, we don't intend having any fire alarms, but if we do, please make your way out and up into the top car park. Thank you very much. Apologies for absence, item 1, thank you.
Thank you. We had apologies from Councillor Archer, Councillor Flitwick, Councillor Hill and Councillor Sutton.
Sorry, any interest? Sorry. Put it on, No. Sorry, Councillor Burton.
I presume it's a personal interest. I am a member of MCV.
MCV, right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
And likewise me as well.
Okay. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, at this point, do we have to declare an interest as members of Matlock Town Council or not?
If that's what Councillor Burton, I believe, are doing. Oh, sorry, MCV. Well, if it is in the same light, if you want to declare it.
Yep.
Chair, all of the town and parish councils affected by the community governance review would have a personal interest. Given that it's recorded on members' registers of interest, I would suggest that we just note that. It'll be reflected in the minutes, and we don't need everybody to declare it now.
We're happy with that. MCV Matlock Community Vision, is that so that for the help of everybody, abbreviations? Item 3, public participation. You will have seen in front of you a statement from South Darley Parish Council, is it? Yeah, is that speakers? No, the other way round, sorry. The Parish Council. The statement from Tansley Parish Council, which is on the website. I believe you've all had a copy. Oh, sir, you would like to make a comment? Speak, thank you. You have 3 minutes, thank you.
I'm Julian Wallbank, a resident of Snitterton, but I'm speaking on behalf of South Darley Parish Council concerning the arrangements for the parish ward of Ochre and Snitterton. As you will be aware, the Local Government Boundary Commission has recommended that Ochre and Snitterton form part of Matlock West District Council ward. This decision was made at the last minute with no opportunity for anyone to comment. Since then, the residents of South Darley have stated overwhelmingly, that's 118 out of 121 responses, that they object strongly to this. Similarly, in response to the community government review, residents have made it clear that they identify with the rural villages and do not want to become a small anomaly tacked onto a town parish. The overriding wish is for Ochre and Snitterton to remain part of South Darley Parish. It would therefore be wrong to transfer the ward of Ochre and Snitterton to Matlock Town. However, within a few years, development of Cawdor Quarry will involve building about 200 houses in the part of the quarry which is currently within South Darley. In accordance with the local plan, there will be no direct vehicle access from the new development into the parish, and residents of these new homes will be bound to regard themselves as part of Matlock. It would therefore be wrong to leave the parish boundaries as they are, thereby splitting the new development in half, with part in Matlock and the rest in South Darley. The solution is to revise the boundary between Matlock Town and South Darley Parish to skirt around the development such that all the new housing lies within Matlock. No existing properties would be affected by this change, and this solution would satisfy the needs of both the new housing and Ochre and Snitterton. South Darley Parish Council therefore strongly urges that the proposal for a revised boundary be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fulbert. I do believe, obviously, in item 6, part of this will be a bit clearer. Thank you. Okay, moving on, we'll go on to item 4, land at Bakewell Road, Matlock. Update on the proposed conversion of the former market hall and modifications of external layout. Giles, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and evening, members. Two-part report in front of you. The first part is to update on progress with the Bakewell Road project, and that's for noting. The second part is on modifications, proposed modifications to the external layout of the site. So in taking part 1, in terms of the headlines, in terms of the scheme to date, we have literally 10 minutes ago received the technical design pack of the detailed design for the scheme from Latham's Architects for review. The aim is to get out to tender in September on the project. Tenders back end of October, which is the point when we'll have a firm indication of the costs on the scheme. If we get an acceptable tender back, then the aim is to commence work in January of next year. In terms of the second part of the report, we've identified with the County Council an opportunity to improve provision for bus passengers within the site, and they comprise the following: a wider footway on the northwest elevation. Those that are familiar with the building, that's the side opposite Sparvillas car park. So increasing the width of that footway to allow some bigger shelters and repositioned shelters which will be facing towards the elements, so effectively providing a screen for waiting bus passengers. Secondly, enhanced cycle provision. We've already got within the scheme 10 secure parking bays, as it were, for cycles. We would like to include some electric bike charging facilities in that same location. Thirdly, a rearranged taxi waiting area, which you can see on the screen, which I'll take you through in a second. And fourthly, some additional disabled parking bays within Sparvillas car park, which you can also see on the screen in front of you. So just to quickly take you through that, in terms of the proposed revised layout of the taxi waiting area, if you can see Imperial Road and the arrows that would come down the access ramp into the site underneath the upper deck car park access, you'll see the proposed configuration of the taxis. So a single lane entry into the taxi waiting area, protected potentially with bollards from HGVs and buses that lay over in that space in the middle. Round in a U-shaped layout, which would have a 2-lane, 1 standing, 1 running lane for taxis, and then exiting the site in the normal way. I'll just show you the visual. These are indicative. Keyboard's not helping. That's a visual from the Bakewell Road end, looking down into the site to where the proposed taxi waiting area would be. And as you'll see there, there is a footway proposed, a shelter proposed, signage proposed, a lighting column proposed, with the taxis waiting in a visible location. Certainly the front end of the first taxi would be visible from Bakewell Road, albeit further into the site. So the proposal is to move the taxi waiting area within the site, not away from the site. We've, as you'll see from the report, we've undertaken consultation. It's never easy to undertake consultation with taxi users because by the nature of it, they're jumping into a taxi. But we tried to do it on 3 occasions, at times advised by our licensing manager. And the results of that consultation are in the agenda pack, as are the results of the consultation with the taxi drivers that we were able to speak to on the site, which were a range of different firms that we spoke to. The proposals also have been informed by a visit to the site from Access for All, who are an access consultancy. They gave us verbal feedback and have recently provided a further summary of their visit. And they didn't raise any concerns about the increased distance for users from where you access a taxi now to where you would need to access a taxi going forward, and were generally supportive of the improvements we were proposing to make in regard to the scheme. In terms of the only other comment I'd like to make is that we've had some feedback from some members on the equality impact assessment, which has been helpful because it's identified an issue that we can address as part of the scheme, which is to improve the signage in front of where buses and taxis and HGVs who use the site to load and unload from M&S and Boys. So where they exit the site, to have some signage and markings on the pavement there just to denote to those drivers that people will be passing in front. People pass in front now because that's the access along the north side of Bakewell Road. But if we are diverting taxi users across that section as well, then I think it's reasonable that we look to improve the signage and marking of that part of the site. So we've taken that on board in the revised EIA as well. As indicated in section 310 of the report, the costs of the works that I've described are proposed as part of a package of public realm improvements to the north side of Bakewell Road, and they're subject to the discussion on the next item on the agenda. So that's all I want to say, Chair, and I'll try and take questions.
Are there any questions? Oh, you've got to be quicker than this tonight. Sorry, Ms. Councillor Burr. Right, well, okay. Councillor Ratcliffe, had you got a question?
Question, yes.
And please go ahead.
Oh, right, thank you, Chair. A fairly general question, I suppose, but in the light of the fact that this particular location will condense and have quite considerable numbers of people there at given times, with the 2-screen cinema, possible community venues taking place at the same time, and again I
think we did bring up concerns about this. I think we call it the running lane, don't we? But I think it'll be all right in the end. I think the concern was that, you know, I'm going to say very elderly people, because I'm elderly, but very elderly people with huge bags of shopping might find it a little bit difficult. And I think the temptation might be for the odd taxi driver to sort of think, well, I'll just pop up there and meet them at the other end. I'm not really quite sure how we're going to stop that. Perhaps I should have asked that as a question. But well done and thank you.
Councillor Purdy.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I was delighted some time ago when I asked for extra monies to be put in this, and the authority approved and members approved it as well. So it is an exciting project, and I think if we can get Tom Cruise to open it, so we might get more links.
This refers to the cost of the additional public realm being £242,000. The next sentence then says the cost of the public realm is £460,000. have to say I find it astonishing that we have two very different definitions of what cost is. I'll just leave that with colleagues. I'd also point out that £460,000 additional cost to the project includes the whole of the north side of Bakewell Road between the cinema and Crown Square. So I'd remind colleagues that this is not part of the project that we've previously approved and will be subject to a separate decision later in this meeting. Now,
Councillor O'Brien, can I just ask, are you actually talking about 4.3 on item 5?
I'm to refer there to paragraph 4.2 of the report, which is the financial implications.
Oh, 4.2, sorry, beg me pardon.
Now, my main point, though, concerns the taxi proposals. Could you put that back up on the screen, Giles, just to help me illustrate the point?
I would do, Councillor O'Brien, but I seem to have been locked out.
Right, okay. Well, hold that in your mind, the sketch we had on the screen there, the taxi rank. Now, I have to say, I've designed many improvement schemes like this, along with other colleagues, and I would never design a scheme where we consciously expected pedestrians to cross from a major area of congregation to a taxi rank across a busy bus route and HGV route. We would never do that because it would compromise the safety of pedestrians. That would be able pedestrians as well as those who are less able in a number of ways. Quite happy with the taxi parking facility being where it's shown in the sketch, but the pickup area, the taxi stop, having it on the far side of the road across two lanes of one lane of waiting buses and one lane of passing buses and HGVs. As I said, to me that totally compromises the safety of pedestrians, and I'm astonished that actually we're designing something which is potentially dangerous. I think there's a far safer design which should be examined, and that would be akin to the current arrangement. Those of you who know the way it works at the bus station there, the custom and practice for taxi drivers to pick up, as Giles has said, to pick up and deposit their passengers in effectively a bus stop adjacent to the market hall, so they don't have to cross any roads where vehicles which vehicles use. Now we're changing that totally. Rather than looking at how we can provide a taxi stop adjacent to the bus stops, we're now requiring pedestrians to cross this busy carriageway. And I would suggest there is a design solution which avoids that, which has the taxi bus stop adjacent, aligned with the bus stops, which will be entirely safe, and avoid in the future us questioning why we designed something which has unfortunately resulted in accidents. So I want to put an amendment to the recommendation, to recommendation 7, such that we delete the word note, we add that, and at the end, are subject to further appraisal to ensure the safety of pedestrians accessing the taxi facilities. So I'm putting that forward not to jeopardise the scheme, but because I think professionally as well as a councillor, there's a far more safer way of reordering the taxi facilities without compromising the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to make a comment there?
Yeah, if I can, just to help members' consideration of that amendment. Just a couple of comments in response, really. One is that pedestrians already do cross in front of the buses in this location and have done ever since I can remember, because that's the crossing point on the north side of Bakewell Road. But I do take the point about taxi users now crossing that part of the site. However, just to remind members, the planning application for this project was approved in February, which required, because we're developing the first bus lay-by for the food and beverage unit, which members have supported, so it already required taxi users to cross that point, and if we improve that with the lining and marking that Councillor O'Brien has actually suggested and I mentioned earlier, then we feel that that is a reasonable solution. So just want to make members aware of that point. I think the other point is that if you were to introduce both buses and taxis picking up at the same point, what you would have is a line of 7 or 8 taxis, all where the buses are supposed to be waiting. No matter what you try and do, that will happen. So that's why the County Council has been very keen to keep the buses and taxis separate. So just feed that back, Chair.
Chair, I'm sorry, this is not generally supposed to be a debate between members and officers, but since Giles has kindly responded to that, I'd like the right to reply that yes, of course we've approved a planning application, but that doesn't mean that when it comes to look at the detail, we need to continue to propose something which I think is accepted is not as safe as it is now. I think there's no dispute that we're introducing a taxi rank which is not as pedestrian safe as it is at present. As I've said, the current proposal, the current arrangement is that taxis pick up and discharge their passengers within one of the bus laybys. So there is no need for them to cross the running lane or the carriageway where there are buses. It is common practice for taxi ranks and bus stops to be located along the same alignment, and it's not helpful, I think, to say that taxis will abuse that and wait in bus stops. The taxis on this plan have their own waiting area, which is quite acceptable. They pull across when they see a passenger and pick it up from a designated area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right. Did you get that, James, as regards what it was actually?
Councillor O'Brien. So I've got that the proposed modifications to taxi waiting and passenger waiting areas, arrangements within the site subject to further appraisal. My hand's not quick enough to write the rest of it down, so if you could just let me have the rest of it, we can confirm exactly what your proposal is.
To ensure the safety of pedestrians accessing the taxi facilities.
Firstly, before the two movers and seconders of the recommendations, do you wish that to be altered within your proposals? Do you want to accept that?
I don't think so, no.
No?
I think
OK,
probably
thank you. Councillor O'Brien, have you got a seconder? Thank you. OK, I take it as no, so that one will not be carried. So with that in mind, it was proposed and seconded as the recommendations as with in front of you. Shall I have a show of hands, all in favour, please? Against? Question. Abstentions? I think unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Moving swiftly on to item 5. As it was already stated by Giles, this is the second part of this about getting the prosperity investment. This is another situation where needs must, if we don't get this in and submit, then we'll end up losing the chance of having funds. Thank you, Giles.
Thanks, Chair. So again, just to start with, thanks to members who've sent in comments on the draft plan. We held a members' workshop back in June, and then we circulated the plan, the draft summary of the plan. I think, Councillor Ratcliffe, you asked for a bit more meat on the bones, so hopefully we gave you that so you could understand a bit more detail in terms of some of the interventions and activities. So just to be clear to members, the government want us to set out the types of things that we're going to do, so interventions at this stage rather than fully defined projects. However, our view was that the more we can do to define those interventions, the better we'll be prepared to start delivering the plan, hopefully at a point in the autumn when the government reviews and signs them off. The funding available for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund is available now. Any spending is at risk, but we expect to receive a decision from government in terms of our allocation around about October time. So the comments from members plus the partners that we've engaged with have informed the version of the plan that's in front of you tonight, as has the equality impact assessment and the climate change assessment. And I just wanted to update a couple of changes since we last came to you with the document. So one is the weighting of grants towards manufacturing and engineering sectors. I know members were keen to see that within the Peak Rural Innovation Programme proposal, so we've done that. The inclusion of a community fund, we've called this Community Resilience Fund. We've also increased the grant sizes within that fund in response to members' comments. And we've also, as part of the climate change assessment, included a climate change strand to that scheme. So hopefully that will sit well with members in terms of the Council's climate change priorities. And thirdly, we've introduced a skills element to the fund as well, which again was in response to members' views at the workshop. In terms of the overall thrust of the plan, we had a debate, a good debate at the workshop about both addressing issues in market towns and rural areas. And you'll see in the report the reference to the former leader proposal and the range of activities supported across the wider Peak District area, which I thought was just a useful representation to show how schemes in the past have benefited both market towns and rural areas. In terms of the plan, just in round figures, just over a third of the expenditure is focused on market towns, the rest is focused on the district as a whole, and I think that's an important point. The outputs, using all the jargon tonight, but the outputs are the things that will be directly delivered. They are indicative. We've deliberately gone in a little bit lower than we might if we were in a competitive bidding process. We're not in a competitive bidding process here. We've got an allocation to put out proposals for. So we'd rather overachieve than put in a proposal that we can't deliver. So that has been the approach taken in terms of the outputs and the outcomes we've included within the scheme. In terms of costs, we've tried to base costs as far as possible on current schemes that we're delivering, on previous delivery in the patch, both through ourselves and through partners, and also with the independent cost plan review that we've undertaken for the Bakewell Road Public Realm scheme, undertaken by the same consultants that did the work on the Ashbourne proposals for Lough. You'll see in the report there's 2 or 3 references to, at the time of writing, things are still to be confirmed. In one of those key areas, which is the joint approach that we described to members previously on both one of the key interventions, the Rural Innovation Programme, and the overall governance for the plan, we've approached High Peak Borough Council with regard to a joint approach on both of those initiatives. In principle, officers at my level have said that they are comfortable with that approach, but we've not yet had formal confirmation of that. So we are as we were when I wrote the report. So we're still waiting for that confirmation. The submission deadline is Monday, so things are getting very tight for time now, and we're due to submit our plan this Friday. So hopefully we'll get a response very soon. We have, however, had a response from the MP this afternoon, which is very welcome. Our MP is in support of the draft plan and wishes to be involved either on the partnership board or in another way to be confirmed, but they've confirmed support for the proposals that we've laid out. Members will also see that there is a 4% allocation towards programme administration and evaluation, which works out about 78,000 of our 1.954 million allocation. We've included that, and we will define the use of that when we've had an answer from our colleagues up in High Peak as to whether we're going to manage things jointly or separately, and obviously that will have a bearing on cost. That's all I want to say, Chair. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Giles. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you again, Chair. You've already anticipated one of my questions, Giles, but if I just add to that, if High Peak declined the offer to join us in the Leaders programme, what are the financial implications for Derbyshire Dales?
Thanks, Councillor Ratcliffe. I think the main implication would be on the Peak Rural Innovation Programme, which is essentially the revamped version of the former Leader programme. So at the moment, what we've set out is a cost for what we would put into that initiative from a Derbyshire Dales perspective and what we feel is necessary to manage the programme. If High Peak didn't come on board, we would need to review the costs associated with delivering that scheme, because if High Peak, our partners, weren't able to commit to that programme, that would mean that the County Council most likely wouldn't be in a position to act as the contracting body for that programme, and those responsibilities, including project monitoring of grants that were given out, would fall to the District Council. So what we've been careful to do within the plan is to err on the side of caution and include a slightly increased allowance for administration costs, depending on how things pan out with High Peak. If we work in partnership, we can bring those costs down a little bit, but for now, we are erring on the side of caution because we're 3 days from submission and we haven't had that decision.
I do have another question, Chair, if I may. Slightly more direct and challenging, perhaps, Giles, but do we really have to pursue the aesthetics of repaving the outside area on this Bakewell Road project all the way down to Crown Square? If your thoughts are still positive on that, can you just reiterate for me and perhaps others why you think it's so necessary to spend this amount of money on something that, as I say, I regard as perhaps veering to the aesthetic?
Thanks, Councillor Ratcliffe. I think I'd say two things in response. One is the significant impact, in my view, from the works that have already taken place around Crown Square from the enhanced public realm for Matlock. That had a significant impact at the time that was delivered, I think, in 2009. And I think what we're trying to do here is add to that and extend it. Being blunt, the priority would be around the immediate development and within the site, as I've just described in the previous answer. But we think there's an opportunity here to look at the whole of the north side of Bakewell Road and improve things all the way down to Crown Square. As we understand it, the County Council's plans at the moment on hold because of the Bakewell Road scheme are to essentially take up the existing concrete flags between the development and Crown Square and replace that with tarmac. So we feel by doing what we're proposing in the plan, we're actually providing an enhanced public realm treatment all the way down the north side of Bakewell Road, rather than having attractive Yorkstone at one end through Shared Prosperity Fund, tarmac, and then back to Yorkstone.
Yeah, so to not put words in your mouth, you feel it adds to the quality of the whole project?
In my view, the entrance to the town centre will be enhanced with that scheme.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, question.
Yes, I've got a question. Are we the lead local authority, or is that DCC? Yeah.
Derbyshire Dales is the lead local authority.
And in terms of the partnership structure and the governance arrangements, I can see that you've put in there about the stakeholders that have been consulted. which of them fit into the category of environmental, nature or associated representatives, which should be included in any partnership discussions? I apologise unreservedly for not bringing this to you before now. I've had a difficult month.
So the approach in terms of wider partner engagement has been to work with the partners that we traditionally have, to be honest, Councillor Buckler, in terms of bringing forward projects of this nature. So we've worked directly, and they were involved in the workshop with the National Park, in particular representing those views from an environmental perspective. We had local authority representation as well as part of that member workshop. And we had input from people like the NFU as well, which was interesting from a landscape perspective. But they are the partners that we've worked with. We haven't gone beyond.
Can I just come back on that? Obviously, the National Park Authority, as somebody who used to work for the National Park Authority, I know how difficult it is to get them to work outside the National Park boundary, which means that the environment of the Derbyshire Dales, which is outside the National Park, won't get the consideration that the environment within the National Park has had.
I take the point, but that's not to say that the other partners that we've engaged with won't have come with their own thoughts around the environment more generally across the Derbyshire Dales. And hopefully you'll have seen from the range of interventions that are shown within the plan, and that we've done a climate change impact assessment on the plan, that we feel that we are doing what we can within our limited allocation. And just to make members aware, it is the lowest allocation in the whole of Derbyshire, to try and address those sorts of issues where it's possible.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Burford, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just want it's a point of clarification, really, on paragraph 2.3 and the information in green. Obviously, I understand Ashbourne Airfield, Milton Road, Middle Peak, which works with obviously Gorda, Holdale and Matlock. But what is Riverside? Whereabouts is that? Bakewell, or is it somewhere else?
Yeah, Bakewell, Riverside.
I'd like it to be Matlock, but it's...
Yeah, that's the Riverside Business Park at Bakewell.
Councillor Purdy.
Thanks, Chair. Well, as Giles said, unfortunately for us in Derbyshire Dales, it is the lowest of all the other authorities, 1.9 million. Others have got 2 point odd. And so it really is not enough for what we want to do as an authority, but I do congratulate Giles and his team on the broad spread that they've come up with. Our previous leader bemoaned the fact that over the years the leader programme was reduced and reduced and reduced until finally it was practically non-existent. And that therefore meant that all of our rural areas and issues lost out. I had another meeting last week with some of the other leaders in the country. We're trying to get the meetings that were held previously on I find difficulty thinking of the word, it's sparse, thank you. So those sparse meetings are trying to be resurrected again to look after rural areas, because if you look at your bank for books, every time there's any money's coming out, it always goes to the urban areas. And so we rural leaders are shouting loud about this. That's why we got to some extent level 1 in the LUF fund, but I'm not enamoured with that LUF, because I'll mention that on Thursday. I do worry if we're not successful with that, we're going to have a huge disappointment. So I broadly welcome this report and pleased to hear that the MP has signed up. If you want, Giles, please use me to contact the leader of IPEAC and see if I can leave us some responses.
Taking that on board, would you like to propose the recommendations, Councillor Purdy?
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation too.
Is that fine to second? Sorry, Councillor Gamble, I've missed you there.
Sorry. Are we still in questions? Yes, I will take the question. All right, thank you. So just a little bit more detail on the public realm again. So the 460 that's put in for this, for public realm, is that all the paving as a first one?
It would be an enhanced footway around the immediate development, the range of measures that we've just been through in the previous item, and then enhanced footway with some signage and potentially bollards on the third phase down to Crown Square.
So roughly, what's costed in with the original? Because obviously at the minute, I think on this fund we're talking about the extra, aren't we, to put in the York stone rather than the. So is the extra on top of the two? Was it the 242, wasn't it, which was the original estimate? Is the rest of the 460 the difference between putting York stone in and tarmac? I sort of, in our remit, I presume that.
No, just to clear up this issue of the different costs in the previous report. What I was trying to do there was just to spell out to members how the cost consultants have arrived at the total cost of 460,000. So they've costed the works, and then on top of that, exactly how they did for Ashbourne Lough submission, they have then worked out costs of overheads, preliminaries, contingency, inflation, maintenance, etc., etc. So that is the difference between those two figures. In terms of provision within the current Market Hall scheme that members approved in March, there was no allowance within that budget for exterior works in terms of the footway, because that was to be delivered by the County Council and would be a tarmac treatment. If we want to improve the entrance to the town centre, which has been the steer that myself and the team have been given from members, then we need to secure external funding to deliver that.
Okay, thanks. So the 460 is for all the public realm. Have you got it costed out as to what's for the paving and what's the rest of the public realm?
We have had a detailed cost plan, Councillor Gamble, which I can't give you line-by-line detail on that, but I can provide further information after the meeting if that would be helpful.
Yeah, if you could please. Because I suppose it's looking at sort of, I'm looking at the things, indicative outcomes, and as part of this I understood that the main thing we're looking at is the difference of the treatment of the footway. And would you be able to send me how you came up with a different treatment, increasing the footfall by 10% as well?
We've taken advice from our economic consultants that have worked on the Ashbourne scheme. The two schemes are different. There's no denying that. Ashbourne is a more comprehensive town centre wide treatment and is therefore easier to model and easier to work out the economic benefits from. But as you'll see in the report, what we've said is that the scheme of public realm needs to be looked at within the totality of the package of improvements that we're proposing for Bakewell Road. So it's not just about the footway, it's about the cinema, the food and beverage unit, it's about the enhanced public transport hub that I've described tonight. So you need to look at the round of those things.
That's what really I was trying to get hold of, really, what the 10% footfall was for. So actually the 10% footfall is not going to be, in a sense, as a result of this funding, is it? Because obviously a lot of the funding, if the cinema is part of that 10%, then obviously this funding package is nothing to do with building the cinema, is it?
This funding package won't deliver the cinema, but it is directly complementary to that scheme. And as members will recall, when we set out on the journey of the Bakewell Road site, improving the western gateway in terms of the public realm was a key objective that the council agreed. Yes, I know. I was just
trying to work out what was part of your 10%.
So the 10% has been based upon the...
All of it?
No, it is based on the proportionate impact of that part of the scheme, and it is an estimate over the economic life of the project.
Oh, right. So it is just the walkway?
Councillor Gamble, I'm going to just have to stop you there because of how we come to these figures and the likes. Is this actually going to change your idea to whether you're actually going to want to propose we go for this funding? I think we can argue that afterwards. I'm going to bring in Councillor Buttle, please. Question.
Don't forget my other question.
No, sorry.
All right, okay. Democracy in action again.
Well, thank you very much. I'll take my democratic action here. Giles, there's this thing about Derbyshire County Council officers supporting and becoming an accountable body for the leader funding package there. And that may include High Peterborough Council, which I think works works alongside Staffordshire Moorlands. Is it okay for Derbyshire County Council officers to work and take responsibility for things that are happening outside Derbyshire? Thanks, Councillor Buttle. That arrangement is the same arrangement that the last 3 leader programmes have worked to. So the County Council has been the accountable body for activity beyond Derbyshire. Clearly, we need to get there.
If that's how it works, that's how it works.
That's how it's worked previously, yeah.
Councillor Wakeman, question?
I'd like to second it, please.
Okay, you find a second. So Councillor Purdy and Councillor Wakeman are seconding it. Anybody else wish to make a comment? Councillor Wayne.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Giles for his efforts and his hard work in this and the other people on his team. But all I'd like to say is one of the things that he mentioned earlier on was the potential of bollards on the side of the roadway. Unfortunately, yesterday afternoon I was witness to an 88-year-old lady fall in that location and had quite a nasty head injury. There are issues with that paving, and that is caused by, in my opinion, and I've seen large vehicles going on the curbs down there, that large vehicles are going down there, and I think it's essential that if we're going to spend a lot of public money to make an area look really lovely, which I hope we do, we need to protect that area, and we need to preserve that York stone, which costs a lot of money. So I would urge some bollards or some sort of traffic measures to stop people going onto the curbs, because it's not the first time and a good number of people have tripped in that area. Thank you very much.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. There's much to commend in the proposal here, and I too would like to thank Steve and Giles and their team for putting together such a very comprehensive package. I do, though, think there are some rebalancing which I would just put forward to members this evening for thinking about and consideration. The first is the Community Resilience Fund. I have to say that sounds like the response to a pandemic to me, rather than something which is there around pride of place. £100,000 over 3 years for the 70-odd parishes and communities we have in the district sounds to me as though we're going to have a lot of people scrabbling around for crumbs. And it certainly contrasts with the nearly £2 million that we're proposing to invest in the centre of Matlock. Well, I suggest if we really want a community resilience fund to make a difference to the lives and livelihoods and sustainability of our rural communities, and I echo what Councillor Purdy said a few moments ago, that there is an unwelcome concentration on the urban areas in government funding. What I don't want to see is the same play played out in the district, where we have a concentration on our market towns at the expense of our more rural communities. So what I would put to colleagues is that there is a case for that Community Resilience Fund both being increased in total value, so that when communities bid into it, they can bid for monies which will actually make a difference to their communities, rather than a couple of £1,000s, which, if you like, is to do with beautification rather than a pride in place, and that we consider increasing the value of that funding, say up to £20,000 per community, so that we give our towns and villages the opportunity to do something which will really make a difference. The second area is around the solar farm, which we're going to consider later on in the agenda. Now, this to me is an example, a wonderful example of the sort of green investment in green technology that we should be promoting. So rather than the council having to find £40,000 to fund the next stage of the feasibility study out of our own reserves, that's a project which we should be putting forward for inclusion in this shared prosperity fund. It fits exactly with our economic development strategy. Likewise, we've got to focus on extending the range of electric vehicle charging points. And again, we've got an agenda item later on which highlights some of the difficulties we're going to be faced with rolling that programme out in the more rural parts of our communities, and highlights the opportunity for looking at partnerships with communities and some of our private sector partners. But we do need some seed funding to be able to make that happen. And the fourth issue I'd raise is again something which comes to light, although I've been aware of it, and I think other members will be, when we looked at the solar farm project, and we are made aware of one of the problems we have in the western part of the district in particular, is the capacity of our infrastructure, our electric grid infrastructure, to be able to accept and sustain green investment. Basically, we have a problem that we and our businesses may want to invest in green technology, but we have a grid system which doesn't enable that to happen. Now, that is a major impediment to delivering our green economic strategy. And it's something which I think we should be putting resources in to scope out to see precisely what that problem is and how it should be addressed. So those are four specific areas which I think could be added into the programme. Now, you ask me, that sounds all very good, but how would you pay for it? What I would say is that we've heard that the public realm programme in the bid, which actually accounts for 24% of the bid, that's 24% of this money we're putting into public realm, that a major part of that is not actually contributing to the economic development of the district, but it is retreating an existing footpath, pavement, between the new cinema and Crown Square. That's all the way in front of Marks and Spencer's and Boys and down there. Perfectly good pavement. I don't know where this rumour that the county council are going to take that up and put it back in tarmac. That is not something they were doing in a conservation area. I've absolutely no idea where that rumour has come from. But I think that is a bit of beautification. That is not an economic priority. It is not going to produce any economic outputs, and it is not going to be for the benefit of the district as a whole. So to me, that is a part of our plan which we could do without, and we could reinvest that, let's say, £150,000, which is going to cost to repave that section of Bakewell Road. We could reinvest it in one or more of the projects which I've suggested. The second area, I think, where there could be some realignment is in the delivery of our grants and our business advice. When I look carefully at the proposal, we're going to have probably three and a half full-time equivalents delivering various forms of business advice. And we're going to still have the business advice service provided through D2N2, which is outside of this scheme. I have to say, I don't think we need that number of business advisors to deliver our economic outputs. I have to say, I think they'll be falling over each other, deciding who is doing what. And I don't happen to think that, you've heard those of you in business, I think, have mentioned this before at council meetings. When businesses are looking...
Councillor Gamble, I'm going to have... sorry, beg me pardon. Councillor O'Brien, I'm going to have to stop you there because you have had 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I don't know whether you was trying to propose some recommendations or not, but if you were, then I'm going to move over to let somebody else speak.
I was on the point of moving...
Yeah, well, you have had 5.
I was on the point of moving an amendment, Chair, which I will then...
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I'm going to put that together in paper so that we all know. I'm going to move over to the next person who wishes to speak over.
Well, I would
this
like
so
to
far.
put forward an amendment, Chair, then.
I'll come back to you in 2 seconds. In round, Councillor Butler. Butler, did you wish to come on together? Councillor Gamble. If you don't want to, that's fine.
Yes, I do. No, I didn't want to jump in front of anyone. Yeah, I mean, as you know, you're debating as to, would this money in the public realm influence my decision? What Councillor O'Brien has kind of outlined was kind of my thinking. I agree completely with what Councillor Purdy said, that it is a small amount of money. And therefore, surely the onus on us is to spend that very wisely and to spend it where we can get the maximum benefit. And I'm not sure that paving at roughly £1,000 a square metre is getting value for money economically. And I think we can look at. Again, if it's 24% just in Matlock, it is not great value for the rest of of our district, which, over the years has seen very little. I know that from it, and also back to when I asked the question about the business advice that we give out, the answer I got was that most of it seems to be to help businesses put in for grants and loans. I mean, again, if we're going to spend this amount of money, we should look, is this value for money? Is this something we could charge for? If companies are actually getting money out of this, should we charge people to collect a bin? Why don't we charge them to help them fill a grant application out? I just think there are options here that maybe we haven't really looked through and to get maximum value out of this for all of the district.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hughes, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Chair. It's a quick comment, really. I hear what Councillor O'Brien says. The one area that I would just suggest that we don't consider of his is the looking at the national grid, because the problem with the availability of access to the grid is a national problem, and it'll need a national solution. And if we spend money on a consultancy project to do that, all we're going to do is replicate something that will probably happen through Ofgem. And I suggest that we go to the electricity regulator and ask them to do it, perhaps rather than do it ourselves, because they would be able to do it for the whole country. And I know there are lots of other local authorities that have exactly the same problem, so I think we shouldn't be doing that. I would just like to say that I'm very impressed by the amount of work that it's an astonishing amount of work that the team has done over the last few months in the different schemes. And I would like to just say that I can understand the points made about the different ways in which the funding is allocated to supporting businesses. I welcome the amount of money that is being put into supporting the high-tech businesses that will allow us to increase our gross domestic product per capita, or grossing and that will have a direct effect on the wage levels in Derbyshire Dales, which are extraordinarily low. And therefore, I very much appreciate the fact that so much is being put into those schemes. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien, an amendment.
Yes, Chair. As requested by you and colleagues, I have given prior notice of an amendment to James McLaughlin. So I'd be happy if he could read that out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. So the wording of the amendments, or proposed amendments, are as follows. That the element of the public realm programme related to that section of Bakewell Road between the proposed cinema and Crown Square be deleted, and the relevant funding be redistributed to one or more of A, an increase in value of the Community Renewal Fund and an increase in the maximum grant to £20,000, B, a scoping report to examine the issues regarding infrastructure capacity of the electricity grid to accommodate green energy investment, C, an accelerated delivery of the electric vehicle charging point programme focused on the more rural areas of the district, D, funding of the next stage of the feasibility study for the development of a solar farm at Watery Lane. And then there is a second part to the amendment, which is that the element of the programme relating to generic business support be deleted and the relevant funding be redistributed to one or more of the 4 points I've just read out on the previous one. So A, an increase in value of the CRF and an increase in the maximum grant to £20,000. B, a scoping report to examine the issues regarding the infrastructure capacity of the electricity grid to accommodate green energy investment. C, an accelerated delivery of the electric vehicle charging point programme focused on the more rural areas of the district. And D, funding of the next stage of the feasibility study for the development of a solar farm at Watery Lane. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor?
Just to check, can I second
Just-
3/4?
No, it's all or nothing, sorry.
I like Steve's business support stuff. I don't really want to be cutting into that.
Yeah. Councillor Gamble, did you want to second that one? Then, okay. So, if we've all understood that, I'm going to go to the vote upon what Councillor O'Brien and Gamble have proposed for the added amendments. So all in favour for the amendments to be added to the recommendations? Against? And abstentions? So that has got now lost. Now we go back to the original proposal of the recommendations that was proposed by Councillor Purdy. Did you wish to come back on anything? And seconded
If I
by
may,
Councillor
Chair,
Wakeman.
I'm trying to keep patient here, but every meeting Councillor O'Brien puts forward amendments or amendments on top of amendments, and it's very tiresome. I know that you've sent lots of emails in, Councillor O'Brien, and here we are, 7:10, and, you know, we've been told by the Chair a lot of items to get through the agenda and a lot of time taken up. What annoys me immensely is that you're challenging the professionalism and expertise of our officers. That's what galls me. So I have to say that. I move the recommendations, Chair.
Yes. Councillor Councillor
I don't find his amendments or interjections in the least bit tiresome. They are extremely well thought out and deserving of consideration. I didn't support that amendment, incidentally, because it's contrary to what I genuinely believe in the heart of this. But in no way do I criticise him for having brought it forward. The only thing I would say, and again, I mean no disrespect to Councillor O'Brien, when you get an amendment of, which was two, in fact, of that length, and I know he prepared it because I saw him give it to you, James. I would have liked to have had it in front of me to read, because unfortunately I really couldn't hear every word that you were saying to us put those amendments to us. So in future, when we get amendments of that length, would all members please try and prepare it in advance, give it to James so we can get a hard copy to read before we properly digest and vote on that. But honestly, Councillor O'Brien was perfectly right to approach these recommendations in the way that he did. Sorry.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Chair, just on that point, and I'll move the mic a bit closer to me, hopefully that will help with hearing. You've got a report on proposed amendments to the Constitution later on the agenda. If members wanted to move an amendment to give effect to amendments being submitted earlier in the day so that we can get them prepared and copied and circulated in the chamber, that's, I've got no objection to that. If I'd welcome it.
Thank you, James. Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. The recommendations are to set out in front of you for item 5. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? That's carried, thank you. Moving on to item 6. No, sorry. Yes, it is. Item 6. Community governance and polling arrangements. James.
Thank you, Chair. Members, at your last meeting in May, you'll recall giving authority to officers to undertake a review of polling districts, polling places and polling stations, along with authority to undertake consultation on the community governance review for the parishes of Darley Dale, Matlock and South Darley. This report is submitted to present the proposed changes to polling places and polling stations, as well as seeking authority to commence a new stage of consultation in respect of the community governance review. In considering this report, I draw your attention to the update report that was issued on this matter by Jason Spencer yesterday, which is available to view on the Council's website. Referring to the report itself, paragraphs 2.2 to 2.8 of the report relate to the proposals in respect of polling places and polling stations and set out the options considered along with the rationale for the proposals contained therein. No questions or queries have been received from members since the publication of the report, so I'm hoping that's an indicator of general agreement to the proposal, although we'll see what happens in this debate. From paragraph 2.9 onwards, we've set out the process followed to date in undertaking a community governance review for the parishes of Darley Dale, Matlock and South Darley. It should be noted that the consultation period, which ended on Sunday, the 24th of July, was framed in a way which sought to establish what views parish councils and residents in those areas had without making any recommendations ourselves as officers. At the time of writing the report last week, 22 responses had been received to the consultation, which all related to the parish of South Darley, where there is a very clear feeling that Mr Wallbank articulated this evening that the electorate and existing domestic properties of the parish should remain within South Darley, but there is some feedback that the parish boundaries between South Darley and Matlock should be redrawn so that the new developments on the Corder Quarry site are moved into the parish of Matlock. It is proposed, therefore, that further consultation be undertaken on this proposal. I'd like to thank Mr Wallbank, the residents and the Parish Council of South Darley for their constructive and positive engagement in the review to date. The update report issued yesterday sets out the feedback received from Darley Dale and Matlock in respect to the community governance review. Darley Dale Town Council has indicated it considers there is a case for Morlidge to move to the parish of Matlock if that is what residents wish to happen. Furthermore, Darley Dale would like to retain 12 councillors given future housing developments in the pipeline, and they've stated that they believe there is a case for the parish of Northwood and Tinkersley to become part of Darley Dale and reinstate Darley Dale's historic boundary. The response of Matlock Town Council reiterates the position of South Darley Parish Council in that the parish boundary should be redrawn so that Oakham and Snitterton remain within South Darley Parish, but new housing developments in former quarries be located in Matlock Parish. Given the elector numbers in Matlock arising from the review, it is proposed that the next stage of consultation consider the number of councillors elected to Matlock Town Council and the areas that they represent in order to achieve a better ratio of electors per councillor in that parish. So, Chairman, just to be clear, because we've issued an update report on what the recommendations are. Number one, that the recommended changes to polling places and polling stations set out in paragraphs 2.2 to 2.8 of the report be approved. 2, that authority be delegated to officers to carry out further consultation on a proposal to move the shaded area identified in Appendix 3 from the parish of South Darley to the parish of Matlock. 3, the authority be delegated to officers to carry out further consultation on the proposal to move the shaded area identified in Appendix 9 from the parish of Darley Dale to the parish of Matlock. 4, the authority be delegated to officers to carry out further consultation on a proposal to incorporate the parish of Northwood and Tinkersley into the parish of Darley Dale. 5, that any changes required as a result of this review be brought back to Council before the 1st of October 2022 to consider any proposals and representations received before any revised community governance arrangements are approved by members. In making that recommendation, Chair, I would just like to clarify that Northwood and Tinkersley have today contacted us in respect of the proposal from Darley Dale, and that will be fed into the consultation that will commence following your decision tonight. The intention of officers will be to take forward whatever you decide tonight as a basis for consultation, and that consultation will run until September, at which point we'll bring a report back to you on the 29th of September for determination. Any changes that you agree have to be implemented by the 1st of October to give them effect for next year's election. So we're running to a very tight timetable on this, which is why we've limited the scope of the community governance review to those areas materially affected by the Local Government Boundary Commission's review. But we'll be happy to take any other proposed changes in terms of community governance probably after the election next year, when we've got some time to actually sit down and do that work properly. On that, Chair, I'll take any questions.
The one point I would make, you've made about 5 recommendations there. Has everybody got the updated? Because obviously I know I haven't.
The updated report was published yesterday, Chair. It was circulated to members by email, and I think it's available. Well, it is available through the Council's website.
Can I ask, has everybody seen that? Then no, because I know I haven't, because that's why.
I'm happy to read out the recommendations again, Chair, if that would be helpful. When we do have a spare copy of the report here for you, Chair, but I'm happy to give a copy of the report to Councillor Hughes if he's not seen it.
Oh, I've got it on my computer.
Okay.
You've got it on your computer. Thank you. Okay, questions? Councillor Hughes.
Yes, Chair. It was about, thank you for the changes to the report, because I think those are changes that were probably requested by Matlock Town councillors. The question I have is about the polling station for South Darley, which I think is going to move to the Arc, and whether that's an appropriate place for that, or whether that is acceptable to the electorate in South Darley, because it strikes me that it's quite difficult to get to the Arc from South Darley, whereas it's quite easy to get to the South Darley Village Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Councillor Hughes, that was a really difficult call to make on this. I think the Boundary Commission haven't helped us in terms of the district warding arrangements, and when we're looking at this, we try and think about making sure that the integrity of the election is not adversely affected. Well, I would suggest if there's a strength of feeling amongst members that we should revisit this, we can do further consultation on it and bring it back in a separate report further down the line.
Councillor Swindle.
Thank you, Chair. I'll follow up on that point, if I may. I'm sorry, James, I've not contacted you prior to the meeting about this one. As you can probably tell, I've been struggling a little bit. It is a question, Chair. We'll come back with some further comments in a moment. The polling station has raised some eyebrows in Oaker and Snitterton, and to some degree, I'd be grateful to ask if we could come back to review this. The reason I ask is, for those of you who know the area, we've got a landslip which pretty much does, I feel really sorry for the people in Oaker and Snitterton, they've been cut off from the rest of the parish. To access the other part of the parish, they have to travel through Matlock along the A6, down Station Road to Darley Bridge. So for them to cast a vote at the moment at the South Darley Village Hall would be a very long trek. They pass the Art Leisure Centre, it makes sense for the time being. But I think at a later date, when the road is repaired and rebuilt, I would like to have the possibility of having that South Darley brought back in. So that's my question, Chair. And just to pull up another anomaly, if district council elections and if there were parish council elections happened on the same day, it would be very bizarre for residents of Oaker and Snitterton Parish to be travelling to the Art Leisure Centre to vote for a district councillor and possibly then having to go back to South Darley Village Hall to vote for a parish council. It's going to create problems in the future. But for now, I can see the logic. But the question is, hopefully we can come back to that. Thank you, Chair.
I think Councillor Swindle, you've probably answered your own question. I think we can look at this. It might be adequate as a temporary solution for the time being, but we'll come back to members with some options and consult with ward members, both in Matlock and in yourself as the ward member for South Darley.
Councillor Ratcliffe, question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is perhaps a little rhetorical, and it's looking to the date of the elections, as it were, when these polling arrangements have been sorted out and confirmed. My anxiety, and I would like to raise it at this point for some reassurance, is about the procedures and staffing that we can employ to see and ensure the smooth running of these elections. One of the things that immediately stood out to me is contained within paragraph 2.15. It's this new, if you'll allow me to say it, rather stupid, I think, innovation of electors having to produce some sort of ID card. That would seem to me, as I think you've hinted on, of slowing down the traffic at the polling stations considerably. Incidentally, I will give you a little anecdote. In 2019, at the Worksworth Memorial Hall, we still had queues outside at 10:05, and we had to put in place special arrangements to allow those there to continue to vote even though the time had closed. So I'm really looking to you, James, to say to me, yes, we know all about this and we will do our damnness and level best to see that everybody is able to cast their vote, despite perhaps the things that are going to be around at that time that would seem to me to be rather inhibiting this democratic process.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ratcliffe. It is a real concern, and the Chief Executive of the Association of Electoral Administrators has recently written to government on this subject. There is a lot of concern about the capacity of electoral services teams to deliver this new requirement. There have been debates, which I don't intend to comment on, about how proportionate it is. The fact of the matter is it's now the law and we have to deliver it from next May. There may well be changes to that given the lack of clarity emerging from government at the moment due to other priorities. There may not be the development on this that's necessarily required to actually implement it. So we'll have to wait and see. But I can give you an assurance that we will do everything we can, as we always do, to ensure that electors are able to cast their vote. Everyone is registered and they have the documentation that they were required to do that.
Absolutely sure about the answer to this, but are you allowed to recruit outside the authority for people to help at these?
Yes, we are, yeah. So last year was the biggest challenge I think any electoral administrators ever faced in delivering that election. Quite frankly, the election shouldn't have taken place in 2021 because of the pandemic, and the challenges that brought forward were significant. However, the benefit of that is that we now have a larger pool of staff. So thanks to colleagues' efforts on that front, we shouldn't encounter any difficulties. As you know, we had to have a larger number of people available in polling stations to administer the poll. There probably won't be that requirement going forward, but we do have a bigger pool of staff to contact and call upon.
Thank you. Councillor Burford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to endorse the comments of Councillor Hughes and Councillor Swindle about South Darley Village Hall. I think, with no idea, I assume, how long the landslip repair is going to take, but I think we should have as a default position South Darley Village Hall as a polling station. I think Oakland City residents have had enough of a shock as it is, having heard or learnt that obviously some weren't aware of the consultation exercise previously, and have had a bit of a shock to find out they're going to be part of Matlock West rather than part of Councillor Swindle's present ward. And of course it's going to be different next May anyway, so it's Bonsler Winster then. So I think, well, no, yes, that's right. So I think to ask them to vote it by car, presumably, or vote, I suppose we can vote by post, but otherwise by car to go all the way to the Arc Leisure Centre is a bit much, because quite a few residents of that area could, I don't know if there's a pedestrian access along the road currently open, but I mean a lot of people can walk to the polling station at South Darley Village Hall currently. So it's not every resident that has to drive there. So I think we should probably bear in mind the fact that or perhaps agree that South Darley Village Hall should be the chosen polling station, with the Ark as a default, if you like, if the County Council fails to repair the road in time for the elections next May.
I'm not sure there was a question for me in there, Councillor Burford, but I think we'll take that away and come back. Yeah.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief because I know everyone who watches football. So on page 67, 2.6.1, Thorpe has suddenly joined Wordsworth Ward. I think there's a mistake being made there. I think it's Hopton, really, isn't it? So can that be altered, James?
Certainly, yeah. Thanks, Councillor Slack. Yeah. I meant to mention that in my introduction.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move all the recommendations if this is an appropriate time. I'd like to thank James for his hard work and Jason Spencer as well, who's done a lot. Mr Warbank, who's come from South Darley. Councillor Swindell and myself have worked with South Darley District Council. I know they were very disappointed, as Councillor Burford's alluded to, with the local government ward boundary changes. So I think that they really appreciate the work of the District Council in actually listening to those residents. The same goes for the residents of Northwood and Tinkersley, which is also part of my county council role, and working with Councillor Buckler as well with that. And can I just say the intention is that that landslip will be dealt with, but obviously there's a lot of work that has to be done to make sure there aren't any more slippages, but we do appreciate it's very difficult for those people. Thank you.
Councillor Swindle, do you want to second this?
I will, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And then whatever you would like to speak.
Comments, Chair, thank you. I'm very pleased with the recommendations, particularly for the outcome that looks set for the residents of Oakham and Snitterton. Just to put a bit of flesh on the bones, I really have a lot of sympathy and feel sorry for the residents of Oakham and Snitterton. They've, over the years, had quite a battle to keep their rural identity as individual villages and separate from the constant encroachment from the town of Matlock. First of all, you had, yes, no disrespect to Matlock. First of all, you had the Corder Quarry development, which they fought to push it back as far away as they can to keep a natural boundary away from the villages and from the urban spread of the town. Then they had the landslip, which cut the parish into two. And it doesn't sound like a huge disaster, but the people of Oakham and Snitterton still identify with the rest of South Darley. They identify with the village hall, the school, the pubs there, and the church. And it's a long trip round every time they want to pop round to see some of their neighbours in the community. Then the absolute balls up of the Boundary Commission came along as well, which put them into the Matlock ward, which then created even greater concern with the local governance review. But thanks to all of the positive and very constructive responses from the residents in Oakham and Snitterton and from the rest of the parish, who also said they want to keep Oakham and Snitterton. Also from the parish council and Councillor Warbank for coming along tonight. So all of that, I think, has played a part in showing the strength of that community staying together. And the proposal to redraw the boundary is the common sense, practical and great idea. Also thanks to Councillor Hobson for doing what she can. It may be a futile effort to push to get that road rebuilt. It is appreciated. And finally, thanks to our officers for listening to the consultation responses and for coming up with the practical and common sense response. And it's just a shame that the Boundary Commission didn't listen to local people as much as the DTC have as well. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Swindle. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I'm pleased that Colin's happy with this, and but I'd like to talk about another community which isn't quite so happy. Northwood and Tinkersley, as you've said, became a parish council separate to Darley Dale in the 1980s because they felt different from Darley Dale. It's a rural community and they are quite determined that they don't want to be part of Darley Dale. The concern is about communities being treated differently or as an adjunct to an urban community, and there's one of two ways that you can get around that. You can either treat them differently, you can behave differently, or you can join them together. And they're really concerned about them being joined together. And so I think the update came out yesterday. Northwood and Tinkersley wrote immediately. They saw it. You know, the parish clerk had a conversation with Darley Dale clerk last week to say that they were looking forward to working more closely together. There'd been no mention of Northwood and Tinkersley being part of Darley Dale at that conversation. And so, you know, this was sprung on Northwood and Tinkersley when this update came out. So I just wanted to make clear that they are vehemently opposed to it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Butler. Councillor Rose.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the list of the new warding arrangements, and very sadly, Carsington Water is disappearing. But when I look down the list of the villages to my own village of Knifeton, I see we're going into, according to this, Hartington and Taddington. I thought we were going in with Dovedale, Parwich and Brassington. Is it me that my map reading isn't very good? Because Hartington's an awful long way away from Knifeton.
Yeah, that's an error in the report, Councillor Rose.
Sorry.
That's an error in the report.
It's an error.
Thank you.
Well spotted, Councillor Rose. Councillor Purdy.
Chair, thank you. Chair, thank you. Can I please remind members what Councillor Hobson and I said to you after the meeting in 2019 with officers from the boundary review? We came away from that meeting with a distinct impression that it was a done deal. We were more or less told that our numbers would be reduced, and we felt very strongly that we probably wouldn't have much input into the boundary review. You remember the first time they made a mistake, it had to be redone. My ward is not happy at all. Bonslow is certainly not happy to go into Winster. And so I can only place on record our complete disquiet at the very bad way that the boundary review have dealt with this authority.
Anybody else wishing to make any comments? Councillor Gamble.
I would just say, if we were that unhappy with what the Boundary Commission did, one of the things we should have done at least is put a district council response to it, which I don't think we even put an official boundary council response to this consultation. We didn't try in any way to try and fight the numbers. We could have tried and we probably could have failed, but we could have tried to put a case to get even one or two more councillors would have knocked quite a lot of these anomalies out and made things a lot better for our residents.
I appreciate what you're saying there. Yeah, I thought some consultation had gone back and what have you, but obviously, as the saying goes, there's a lot of water gone under the bridge and we've had COVID in between. So I presume that'll be half the excuse. But I know it was raised at the time why they were interfering with boundaries. So, yeah, your point is taken on board. It has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Sorry, against? Oh. And abstentions? I'll just go through the motions. There we go. That's carried. Thank you very much. Not yet, you can't go. We want a running commentary of the score. Item 7, thank you. Household Support Fund. Tim.
Thank you, Chair. I'm introducing this in the absence of Rob Coggins. Rob Coggins is one person who will very definitely be getting to see the football because he's not able to be here tonight. He regards this as a good news item, and the whole point of the report is to inform you about some grant funding that we received last year and we've received again this year, to inform you of how that was used in the district and how it's proposed to be used now. You'll note that there's a very short time period to get the money paid out. We've got to get it paid out by the end of September. And you'll note the amounts of money that are proposed, the sources of the money that's proposed to make up that £100,000 fund this time round. If there are any questions, I will do my best to answer them, but I might have to refer you back to Rob.
Question? Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a good reward, really, Tim. But my question is that with October coming, we're going to see increases again in the utility bills, probably 60% or more. Are we a contingency to even get more money into this fund, Tim?
The funding that we've received has been passported to us by from the County Council. Yeah. You'll see in the report that Rob's team have made that up with some money from the homelessness grant as well. There are other amounts of money that are being spent in the district by the County Council out of this overall funding. Obviously, it relies on money coming down from government, Councillor Slack, but I think we can sort of be assured that Rob will do his absolute best with any money that he gets made available to him.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Councillor Ratley?
No question, Chair, but if Councillor Purdy is still speaking to me and he wishes to propose this, I'll gladly second it.
Well, why don't you
It's a bit of an accident that I'm
it?
wearing a blue shirt tonight and not a red one. However, reports like this make me absolutely proud to be a member of this authority, doing the work that we have. I'd like it recorded, incidentally, the thanks to the staff who have administered such a wonderful fund, and to let them know that we recognise their efforts and acknowledge it publicly.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. I'm going to take it that you are proposing this. It doesn't matter which side of the house it comes from. We are all here to benefit the whole district council. So it doesn't matter which side proposes it. We're not looking for point scoring, sir. So,
if I could second it, Chair.
Then Councillor Purdy, if you'd like to second it, I will accept you as a seconder. Is there anybody else who would wish to speak?
Councillor Ratcliffe, I've sent you an email on your comment to me. You put it much more succinctly than I did in relation to Councillor Bryan. Councillor Bryan does make some very valid points. My point, clumsily, was that it takes a lot of time when the amendments are put on the table and we've got a lot of agenda items to do. So I welcome your point, which was very valid, that ideally we need to have them submitted beforehand. Interestingly, Councillors Martin and Sue Barefoot, Councillor Cruz and myself and Councillor Obson went to the breakfast reception meeting of the CAB, was that yesterday, the day before, lost track of days. And it's really illuminating the work that they do. And what I've offered to the manager there is that when we have a workshop, ideally I'll bring the manager in to give half an hour input to all members to just show what work they are doing. The worrying aspect is that the manager told us their funds dry up in about 8 or 9 months and they don't know where the next stream's coming from. So yeah, this is a good news item. So I could never fall out with you, Mike. Like different opinion, but I won't fall out with you.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Yes, Chair, just briefly, I was going to say, follow what Councillor Purdy had said about the visit to the CAB yesterday to see the work they're doing with the vulnerable and disadvantaged people in our community, and echoing from what Councillor Slack said, and what you've said, we're all working together and, times are going to get really difficult for people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So it's been proposed and seconded. The recommendations for item 7. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? Okay. That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 8. Development of the solar farm on council-owned land.
Thank you, Chair. I probably ought to start this by saying thank you to another person who can't be here, which is Jo Hill. She's also got tickets for the game. So this is an update on the Stage 1 feasibility work that's been done in relation to 5 sites that were identified with some potential for development as solar farms to offset the residual emissions that will still exist when this council's been through its decarbonisation programme. You'll see from the report that the recommendation is basically that one of those sites has feasibility, has possibility of being developed as a solar farm, and it's recommended that that site be taken forward to a Stage 2 feasibility study, which is explained further in the report. At this point, I probably ought to address the letter from Tansey Parish Council and explain to members that this is a completely different piece of land, parcel of land, from that which was previously allocated as a traveller site. Longest standing members will remember that that site was owned by the County Council, is next to the refuse community site, for those of you familiar with Ashbourne. And this is a site across the other side of the road, behind the small council depot, behind the allotments there, butting up to the sewage treatment works that are mentioned in the report. This land is within the District Council's ownership. The land that was allocated as a traveller site was in the County Council's ownership. The land that's proposed here also has a restrictive covenant on it, which prevents its use for siting of caravans, which is alluded to within the report. It's mentioned that there's a covenant there. You'll see from the report that our consultants, APSI Energy, reckon that there's the possibility or the potential to generate just under 1 megawatt of energy from this particular site, which is somewhat less than we'd originally hoped from this programme. We were hoping for 2 megawatts to offset our residual emissions. You'll see that there's mention in the report about perhaps going further with the development of solar farms elsewhere, looking at maybe purchasing land to do that, or looking at other ways in which that can be generated, but perhaps treating this as an easier learning opportunity as part of the step along that way. The report sets out the different works that will comprise Stage 2 of the feasibility study in some detail, and thanks to Joe for that. They are effectively looking at whether we can, making sure we can get a grid connection on this particular site, talking to Severn Trent and hoping that we'll be able to get an arrangement in place where we sell electricity direct to them, because that will produce the best return for this council and ensure that all the energy is used, deals with issues of planning permission, deals with the legal issues around the covenant, and so on and so forth. That's all I really wanted to say in introducing this, but if there are any questions, I might be better placed to answer this than I would if there were questions on the last report.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman, question?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, can I do question and comment? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. It's an attempt to speed things up. Okay, Tim. First of all, okay. Yeah. First of all, what level of negotiations have we carried out with Severn Trent as regards this the private wire system?
At this stage, we haven't had any formal negotiations with them. That will form part of the Stage 2 study.
Okay. Thanks. Well, that really isn't, in my eyes, a problem that we don't have something concrete with Severn Trent, because in fact, I'd like to move this this recommendation, and for the reason being that, and what I would say that I would like to see is that we do go for the grid connection, because the idea of a private wire to me is not substantial and is not concrete enough for us to go ahead with this kind of project, because we could end up with being dependent on one purchaser and then find ourselves having to backtrack and go with the grid connection. So in moving it, I would say that I would like to see the grid connection. I would also like us to look at the battery option as well, because I think that's absolutely critical, that we maximise the amount of energy output and by this system. We don't waste anything that way. It's slightly disappointing that we've got just 1 megawatt. So fellow climate change working group people, you can't ride off into the sunset yet. We've still got work to do. But I think we would have looked on this as just a stepping stone anyway, and not a reason to rest on our laurels. And of course, the Stony Middleton isn't dead in the water yet. It's just got a few sort of problems of its own that we may be able to address in the future. I think the covenant from Nestle isn't really going to be an impedance on this, and I think also if we have any kind of objection from the grazing rights, I mean, it's any ground solar array can cope with grazing rights as well, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. So I'm happy to move this, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Do you want to?
If I could just come in on a couple of things there. I completely agree with Councillor Chapman about the grid connection. That's something that's recommended at this stage of the work anyway and would need to be taken further. Even if we were able to negotiate an agreement with Severn Trent, there's no guarantee that at some stage in the future that might not be broken. So you don't want to be left with something, as a report refers to it, as a stranded asset. So I completely agree about that. Grazing rights is also something that we would like to work to continue on that site. There's no reason why that can't coexist with the solar farm. And I did mean to address one of the points that Councillor O'Brien raised on the previous report, actually. There's currently, Ofgem are currently consulting on Rio, which is the pricing formula that they use for the energy companies. And amongst many things, that proposes something like £23.5 billion worth of investment in the grid for green measures in one form or another. Whilst a lot of that consultation is far too technical for me, certainly, and for Joe too, I understand, to comment on, it would be perfectly appropriate to make a comment along the lines of improving rural infrastructure, if members want us to do that.
Councillor Buttle.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Absolutely welcome it. It's been 3 years that I've been here and I've been looking forward to this every day. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm really glad that we're doing it. While we're here, we also seem to have 20 million quid floating about in our current account, which is going down at 5% a year, roundabout. So I think maybe we should start thinking about to push even more money into this type of thing. We're better off owning solar farms than we are owning some sort of overnight cash in some financial house somewhere. So yeah, fantastic. I really like it. We're doing well. And thank you very much, Tim and Joe and everything. Fantastic, great.
I don't really think there was a question there, just the fact could we spend some more money that we've got sitting around in our bank.
I want to, the question is, can we spend more?
Yeah. Can we spend more, please, Chief Exec?
Oh, Chair, I wish there was £20 million sat in our bank account. Clearly, the Council does have capital reserves and resources, all of which are allocated, but the way that we actually utilise our monies is it comes in and it goes out on the lending market, such that we do try and generate a greater level of return. But ultimately, it's for Council to determine what you want to put in the capital programme, and you will have an opportunity in the next few weeks to consider the current capital programme as it stands. And if you wish to amend that, then that is within your gift. But clearly, this is an exciting project which we want to move to stage 2, and then we can see where it takes us after that.
Councillor Butler, please.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that I know the answer to this, but I'm just checking. The allotments on there are not covered by the solar farm. Is that correct? In the green drawing, it's not clear. I'm just making sure before I vote yes to this that we're not going to be then putting a solar farm over the allotments.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Butler is completely right. He does know the answer to that. and yeah, no, that the allotments aren't going to be covered by this. It's a different area of land, Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Councillor Burford. Mrs.
Thank you. Just a clarification, Tim. Could you just explain about the covenant and just put a bit of meat on the bone, what exactly it is and what it says?
Okay, I'm doing this from memory a little bit, and bear in mind I'm not a lawyer. My understanding is this land was transferred to the council by Nestle as a result of changes down in Ashbourne. And as part of that arrangement, when the land was transferred, there's a covenant, as there often is in land transactions. A covenant was put on it, which restricted us from doing a number of things, the only one of which I'm sure of is that we're not allowed to put caravans on, and you'll obviously know why I know that particular bit, because we looked at this piece of land as potential for a traveller site. Now that covenant could be fought, but it would be an expensive legal battle unless they have indicated that they would defend it. I would presume that there might not be such a strong objection to a proposal for a solar farm.
Councillor Wakeman. Question.
No, I'd like to second it, please, Chair. And I think Joanne's done really well in the short time she's been here. Thank you.
Councillor Slack, question.
I was going to second Councillor Chapman's move. I fully support Councillor Chapman on this and all of it. It's a wonderful that we are going this way. We've a lot more to do. This is only the start, so we're going in the right direction, and we would need to get more of these. In regard to Stony Middleton, I would have thought really that Western Power should really make the connection. Really, it shouldn't be to a local authority to have to pay an enormous lot of money to bring power from Chesterfield. I think Western Power, with all their profits they're making at the moment, should definitely put the connection to this solar farm at Middleton, Stony Middleton. In regards to energy in the Derbyshire Dales, these wind farms, I'd like to see more inland wind farms, really. They produce more energy and solar panels, really, overall. So, but they are more controversial, I must admit, but in the right place, and they are very okay. It never offends me looking at Carsington. Every time I go past and see them turning, I think to myself, that's clean power. That's not damaging the atmosphere, it's clean power, and we've got to have more of this. It's either have pylons and wind turbines you can look at, or have a world where we get what we had last week of all that heat and burning, and it's terrible. We've really got to concentrate on going forward on renewable energy, and I support Councillor Chapman's move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Slack. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm very pleased that this is coming to Council. Can I suggest one slight amendment to Councillor Chapman and to Councillor Wakeman, and that is that we include writing a letter to Ofgem asking them to take account of feed into the national grid from smaller and larger developments, and also the feed-in tariffs that are paid at the moment. So really, what the things that Tim was mentioning about improving access to the national grid from those organisations that wish to provide power. And I mentioned also here Derbyshire Dales Community Energy, which wants to put in a large number of small-scale schemes. And several of those schemes that they proposed in Matlock were limited very significantly by the lack of capacity in the national grid, and meant that they were subscale, or they were much smaller than they would otherwise have been. So it's quite important that the national grid is upgraded to the point where it's able to take the load coming in at the periphery, and it has the right sort of load balancing arrangements within it to safeguard that. And I note the proposal for batteries, and batteries are one of the methods of load balancing that could be included, and therefore is probably quite appropriate in this particular example. So that's my proposal, that we also write to Ofgem in the manner that Tim Braund was suggesting.
Councillor Chapman.
I'm very happy with that. I'm just going to. We'd still be presented with the same high connection costs, though, David. That's the problem. I mean, that's what we need to lobby is for them to reduce or to eliminate those connection costs, or make clear to them what an impedance to any future renewable energy small scale schemes would be. So, based along that kind of approach, I'm quite happy with that.
Chair, can I come back on that? Well, quickly, this happened in the telecommunications sector, and the telecommunications sector managed it very effectively through tell, and then particularly Ofcom in the early days of Ofcom, and they managed to reduce the cost of broadband down to about £6.50 per connection per month, in terms of the wholesale charge that is paid by a retailer to Openreach for the provision of a broadband connection. So I think that can be done. It's a matter of getting the right accounting model, and there is experience to be gained from the telecommunications sector.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Wayne introduced us to Professor Stephen Martin in 2019, and it's been very productive. I've had lots of meetings with him, and we got him to the two seminars at Derbyshire County Council and at Peak Park. And as you know, or if you don't know, some of you may know, but he's set up Derbyshire Dales Energy, and I invited him to give a presentation 2 days ago to Joe. Joe knows about the scheme, Tim knows about the scheme, but I want Paul to be briefed and the officers. I won't say any more than this at the moment, but it's very encouraging with what they're doing. And there was a representative from Share Energy there, who seems to be one of his expert consultants, and gave us a quick slide review, which we want to bring to the future council. But for the moment, what we've done is handed it over to Tim and Joe to carry on more talks with him and explore. So I think we'll find great benefit from this relationship. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly support this proposal. Councillor Purdy will be relieved to know I'm not going to propose any more amendments. I'm a little surprised, I have to say, that he finds amendments objectionable. So I also look forward to the day when he and his party are in opposition in this council, and they wholeheartedly support all the proposals put forward by a more progressive administration. Leaving that to one side, I think that, as others have commented, one of the significant issues this report has raised is that of the situation in Stony Middleton, where we do have a development site which could produce a really excellent return to the council in terms of our climate emergency and our revenue. But we can't realise that opportunity because of the grid connection costs something in excess of £2 million. That's what makes it unviable. So I do commend the suggestions from David Chapman and Tim Braun that we continue through the Climate Change Working Group to make representations to the relevant agencies about that. I have to say, this is not a problem across the whole district. It is a particular problem in the northwest part of the district, where we are on the peripheral fringes of Western Power's network, and that is where the problem exists. And as I said earlier, it not only compromises our investment in this particular project, but we will find as we go forward, it's going to compromise investment proposals from local businesses who want to invest in green technology, because they will not be able to make a grid connection if they use three-phase supply at present. The grid won't accommodate that. And we will also find that if we want to move, for example, to have ultra-rapid electric vehicle chargers, we won't be able to have those either. So what this report highlights to me is that real issue in Stony Middleton and other parts of the district. So I do hope we will take on board what David and Tim have said and make the strongest possible representations. I also hope that as a council we'll continue to support Hope Valley Renewables. They're mentioned in this report here. They were pursuing a parallel project at Stony Middleton, which they're a community interest company, and their proposal was that the renewable energy generated is sold locally to the villages surrounding Stoney and Middleton. So some are in my ward and some are in a number of other wards, and that is a parallel initiative which has been hit by the same stumbling block as we have with our proposal. But I'm delighted to support this proposal on the table, and I think it illustrates the genuine benefit we've had at a council from appointing a dedicated climate change officer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Just for clarification for the clerk, and make sure James has put it all in, for the added piece, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Wakeman, who's been seconded, are accepting the added. Can you just read that out for everybody's sake, please?
So I think, I've tried to summarise it based on the discussion between Councillors Chapman and Councillor Hughes. The authority be given to officers to write to Ofgem to consider improving access for smaller and larger developments to feed into the national grid. Is there anything to be added to that, or is that okay? I'm getting nods.
So with that, as I said, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Moving on. Item 9, Interim Electrical Vehicle Strategy.
Thank you, Chair. This is very much an interim strategy proposed here, and the main reason for introducing this at this stage is spelled out in paragraph 2.3. There is a funding round coming up, and in order to access that, we need to have a strategy. That funding round it only really addresses further 7 kilowatt charging, which is not necessarily what members want to see for the entire future around the district, as we've just heard. However, it is available this year, and other funding for that greater investment isn't. Very much the view of officers that we ought to take advantage of that funding round, and in order to do so, we need to introduce this strategy. The strategy deals with a number of other issues. Our own fleet's mentioned in it. Dealing with the taxi fleet is also mentioned in it. Those are frankly peripheral to the main thrust, which is to enable us to access that funding round. An application is being worked up separately by Vicky Hatfield and Joe Hill working together, and they continue to also work with the County Council over a broader and more comprehensive and hopefully ambitious strategy for looking at rapid and fast charging across the district, taking into account the deficiencies we've already talked about in relation to the electrical infrastructure that covers here. But that's, to be very clear, that's what the purpose of this strategy is. It isn't a final strategy, it's something to enable us to do something now and to be built upon for the future.
Mr Rattler, question.
Thank you, Chair. A very quick preamble to the questions that I'd like to ask Tim, if he's able to answer these or just respond to them. It does seem to me that whilst the strategy and its implementation is an extremely welcome advance, we seem to be still rather reliant on private providers, or indeed the Derbyshire County Council. In that respect, were you aware, Tim, that in a very recent paper reporting from the D2 Joint Committee, there is a statement that says that existing charging points are sufficient for the number of vehicles that are currently in use across Derbyshire Dales. They quote 7 out of every 1,000 vehicles that are operating on Derbyshire Dales roads, and that furthermore, they feel that any strategy should be angled towards achieving greater geographical balance and a mix of charging speeds. So not necessarily provision within market towns, as it were, but actually out into the more rural areas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm aware of that. To be very clear, that the charging points that currently exist in the district lose money for the providers. They're very much aimed at stimulating and generating demand for the future. They're a loss leader, effectively, which the operators use. If we were to finance them, we would stand all that risk, stand all the risk of financial loss that goes on at the moment, which is why the model of going with a provider, such as Chargemaster, who we went with previously, is still very much the predominant way of doing it.
Just to say, Tim, and thank you for your answer, it's just that when I read that, I was slightly... I didn't feel that somehow they were getting behind our aspirations, which are to try and roll out as many as we can, because we are firm believers in electric vehicles and their role in climate emission reduction. One felt that they were taking, I'm talking about the county council, a somewhat complacent approach to it.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Ratcliffe. I'm not sure that they're completely complacent about the matter, but nevertheless, getting some priority behind it is a little bit difficult sometimes. Officers here firmly believe, as I know certainly some members, possibly all members believe, that this is just one part of a bigger picture. What's proposed here is one part of a bigger picture. There will be a need for different kinds of chargers. The charging that's talked about here is largely residential charging. It's charging for people like one of us who might want to buy a car, lives in the district but hasn't got home charging. That's really what we're looking at. It's not looking at the tourists visiting, being able to charge their car up pretty quickly so they can stay in a village for a day and then move back to wherever they're staying, whatever it might be. It's looking very much at residential at this stage because that's what funding is available for. However, the longer term strategy that will grow from this will very much deal with the points you've raised, Councillor Ratcliffe, about that mix of geographical spread and mix of charging form. Councillor O'Brien also raised a very good point about where ultra-rapid charging may be available at the moment. There are very, very limited places within the district where that could currently be placed.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gamble.
Hi, just a quick question. On the car parks, it says being considered for the second phase. I just wondered, did you look at Monsell Head at all? And was there a reason it was discounted?
Applications for the second phase are still being worked up, Chair, Councillor Gamble, so that there will be further information coming forward to members about where second phase locations might be in due course. That's the work that Vicky and Joe are doing between them at the moment.
All right, they're going to look at that, because obviously I know that's quite a big and it's quite a profitable car park for you, so presumably electric charging wise would be as well.
Well, again, just referencing the type of charger that we're talking about here, it's residential charging rather than visitor charging. Particularly, there are some locations that are sort of favoured, but they've got to be worked up into a final proposal, and they'll be discussed in due course, firstly with the Climate Change Working Group, then with members more broadly.
In our area, that could be something, cause, in the future, as part of ongoing, I know this is a short-term strategy, obviously, towards a particular funding, but are we going to be looking at, or is it going to be us or going to be county? I keep being asked by villagers, I have lots of villages in my ward, with lots of areas that don't have off-street parking, and they all would love a village centre, a village place where they could do it. And I'm in the position where I have almost nothing to say to them. And is this going to be part of the strategy? Because there are lots of villages, particularly our end, that are going to need this.
Yes, we certainly believe that's going to be part of the strategy. It is led by the county. The on-street stuff is led by the county, and we're part of that conversation along with all the other districts and boroughs. It's also beginning to form part of the Vision Derbyshire discussions around that area, and may yet form parts of the discussions that are going on about the potential combined authority as well. But the county are leading that. They have had a change of staffing dealing with that issue very, very recently, and we're building up that new relationship with the new person responsible for it, who we already knew from another strand of work anyway.
When you get things like that, is it possible to send something when you've got, strategic, if you like, points, so that when we keep getting asked about this, and I do get asked about this quite a lot, that I've got something that I can say that even if it's who's dealing with it and roughly how far the road down where we are.
I can certainly get Joe and Vicky to put up a brief briefing note about the issue that might be of use to members generally. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Tim, I do go along with what you're saying about residential areas. I have a question in on Thursday about this, but I'll leave that till Thursday. But town centres like Wordsworth, Ashbourne, Matlock and so forth have many areas where it's totally impossible to get charging points where they live in flats and so forth. So residential is very important to get going, because I've spoken to quite a lot of residents in my ward in Wordsworth, and a lot of people are getting ready for the next car to be electric. But they've got same as to say to me, I'm going to charge it. I want an electric car. I want a place to charge it overnight so I can go to work next day. So bringing it on car parks is a good idea, residential for residential use, and I fully support this. Have you any statistics in town centres, how many residents, have you questioned residents, how many people are prepared to buy an electric car if the installations are there?
Thank you, Chair. There are some brief statistics within the strategy. It's worth mentioning Wirksworth has our only 22 kilowatt charger at the moment, so has and I can remember which is rapid and which is fast, but has a faster charger than the other sites. The most well-used site, I can't remember all the stats, councillors, like off the top of my head, but the most well-used site is the one on Edgefield Road, actually, which is very well used. I think 58% usage time on there.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this too, and I just would like to note that I took a photograph the other day of 3 cars on Edgefield Road being charged at the same time, which I think was a record for me. Anyway, I don't know if it's a record for anybody else. But so it does, when the first few months when the chargers were installed there were no cars charged for ages, and now we have 3 at the same time, and it's growing very rapidly now. That you go up the road and you hear a whine of an electric car, be it hybrid or fully electric, and I think we're going to see more of those. And I'd also welcome the distribution of car parks that are being proposed across the district, because I think there is a real issue for car parking charging in rural areas, particularly for the points made. And can I suggest that we look at actual street, when it comes to the full strategy with the county council, we look at how we do the street charging and whether that requires putting in new circuits, or whether there is a way we can duct from individual buildings to a point on the curb that would allow people to charge using their own domestic supply, which would probably be cheaper than having using a commercial service. Thank you.
Do you want to answer that, Tim, as regards working on the on-street?
That is part of the conversation with the county council. It's more difficult than dealing with our car parks, as I'm sure members appreciate, but nevertheless, it's a vital part of that conversation.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Joe, to help with the time, I will combine my question and comment. The first thing I'd say is that we only have one charging point in the whole of the Hope Valley, and that's in Hope. So it is a real issue in the northwest part of the district. I was told by officers a few months ago that there would be a charging point installed in the Oddfellows Road car park in Hallissage this year. Tim, can you now tell me that that is not going to be the case? That's my first question. My second question is relating to something that others have said, that it's a little surprising to me that our interim strategy doesn't acknowledge the interrelationship between providing for the needs of our residents and visitors. Now, I understand the issue about the speed of charging, but when you look at the time that visitors park in the Heritage car park, and I think it's the same in Baslow, the average is somewhere between 5 and 6 hours, which is quite sufficient time for a rapid charger to charge at least 75% of electric vehicle. So it certainly would be of great benefit to visitors coming into that part of the district as well as to residents. I'd like to see that our strategy acknowledge that relationship so that our residents are using the chargers predominantly in the night time, but we are making them available to visitors in the daytime, because that fits, of course, very comfortably with our overall strategy, which is trying to reduce the number of people who come into the district and the national park using internal combustion engines, diesel or petrol. So my question is why. My first question is, can you confirm the issue about Heritage? My second is, do you think it would be helpful if we did make more of a correlation between the requirements of our visitors and our residents, rather than just focusing on our residents?
Okay, to take the first question first, which is usually a good way of doing it. I won't categorically say it won't happen this year, Councillor O'Brien, but I would think it's unlikely. The funding bid's got to be put in by the end of this year, and the money's got to be spent by March 24, I think, from memory. It's mentioned in the report. In relation to the second point, the reason why this interim strategy concentrates on the 7 kilowatt residential chargers is because that's what funding is available for. It's not available for faster charging than that at this time. And we very much want to maximise what's available now, bearing in mind that we completely agree with Councillor O'Brien and others, I'm sure, that a fuller strategy needs to address those issues of different charging speeds appropriate to the places where those chargers need to go. It also needs to take into the reason there's a faster charger in Wirksworth is because the electrical infrastructure to service that was available at that point, at that time, which was rare amongst our car parks. Now, that work's been done by somebody other than me, but it is my understanding that was the only point in the council area, in the district, that facility was available and which a provider would take a risk on. So we've got to deal in the real world a bit as it exists at the moment in relation to what funding's available, whilst bearing in mind that we do need to develop a much more detailed strategy that deals with charging of all different speeds, all the way up to ultra-fast, effectively an electrical charging service station, which it will be good to develop within the area. If you look at the capacity map, there's only one place shown where that might be possible in the district, which around the Carver area. So, there's potential for that to develop in time. But this strategy is aimed at what's there now. Bear in mind, it has been checked by the people who administer the grant, whose name escapes me just at the moment, Energy Saving Trust or National Energy Action, I can never remember which is which. So it has been checked by them, and that they are happy with it to serve the purpose for which we need it right now.
Councillor Purdy.
Thanks, Chair. Can I remind members, please, that I attended as Paul did, a D2 Joint Committee, Economic Prosperity Committee at County Hall yesterday, when we were given a presentation by the two officers on this. And as Tim says, it is very much joint working. But the stats are there on the slides that are sent out to you, one example of which is that per 1,000 people, Chesterfield accounts for the largest proportion of EV ownership in Derbyshire, and we're second with 17 EVs per 1,000 people. And there are other stats there for you to look at. So it is a complex issue. It's very much dependent, as Tim says, on the money coming through, and there are many areas to address. It's a matter, the officer said, of prioritising the right route. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzherbert.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think the stats are very interesting on this that were read out earlier, 58% in Edgefield Road in October 21. I think if we could be updated on that fairly regularly or have access to that, that would be fairly useful. I'd just like to point out with my tourism hat on, we've had several seminars about increasing that sort of usage to tourism accommodation providers and attractions as well. And so we're trying to push that out through that medium as well. And of course, the sort of elephant in the room is we should try and encourage developers on the developments that we consent at the planning committee to increase their installation at new homes and on those new developments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Neil Buckle.
Thank you very much. There were two things really. The first thing was Western Power Distribution actually have a network capacity application where you can stick your postcode in for your village or your parish, and it'll tell you the quality of the service that the local electrical connections can support. And you can find orange spots and black spots and red spots and green spots. And green spots are places where you can put a nice big fast charger. And there are about, but not very many. So if you're interested and you want to find out whether or not you can stick one in your parish, then the network capacity map might be quite helpful to you in the short term. In the long term, we need to talk to Western Power Distribution about actually providing a decent quality service. That they lied a few years ago, saying they would have no problem dealing with renewable energy and electric cars, and they just lied, flat out lied, and they've spent no money. And that they need to be spoken to about that. I was going to say something else, but I've completely forgotten it. I'm sorry.
Do you want to come back?
To just come in on that, just as a bit of information, the consultation, the Ofgem consultation I mentioned earlier, does deal in part with that issue as well, and does propose investment in those areas.
I've remembered the other bit. I was wondering whether or not there was some way we can combine our batteries, our solar panels and our car parks so that we can actually provide our own service without having to be linked in too closely to Western Power Distribution. It strikes me as that we've got it's a one-stop shop, isn't it? A car charger, a battery and a solar panel. So I was wondering if there's something that could be chased up with that.
We did discuss that briefly with Professor Martin and the Share Energy representative, Richard, can't remember his surname, yesterday or the day before. Yesterday it must have been, I wasn't in work on Sunday. And their view at the moment is that that's some years away, but will come in this country.
Thank you. Just before I move on to Councillor Burford, could I have somebody to propose that we extend the meeting to finish all items on the agenda?
Chair, I'm quite happy to move an extension of half an hour.
Councillor Donald? Oh, no, not half an hour, up till we conclude the whole business.
Okay then, until we finish the agenda, Chair.
Thank you. Second? Yes, Chair. All those in favour, please show. Thank you.
Yeah, just a simple question, Chair. How much do our customers who charge their cars at our car parks actually pay? And if you have to leave your car for about 5 to 6 hours to charge it up with a 7 kilowatt charger, then whatever, then how do they pay? Or how do the parking wardens regard a car left for several hours?
I can't remember that off the top of my head. I will provide that to you separately, Councillor Burford, if that's okay. I can tell you that one of our employees is a key user of the Edgefold Road site, though, so he'll probably know.
Councillor Butler, did you wish a question?
No, I was just going to feed into that. It's just the same as as you pay to be in the car park normally. So however much you pay that amount.
That's what I was led to believe. Car parking charges apply even though you're connected up to the electric, because the electric is sourced from another company. Thank you. Okay. After all of the questions that we've gone through on this, I fell asleep. No, I didn't. I can't remember if we had a proposer or a seconder. So at the end of the day, could I have a proposer for this recommendation to get a strategy? Councillor Burford and Councillor Donnelly second. Anybody else wishing to make any more comments? with that, I'd like to go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Thank you for that. We'll take a 5-minute comfort break and then continue. Okay, members, I believe everybody who is going to carry on convening the meeting is in the room. So we're going to carry on to item 10. Recommendations from the consultation working group. James, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief, members, but this is quite a detailed report, so I will just take a bit of time to take you through the main points within the recommendations. So the purpose of the report is to consider the recommendations of the Constitution Working Group for approval and adoption. I think it's important to be clear that whilst I've submitted the report, it's actually submitted on behalf of those members who identified the direction our governance arrangement should take in the remaining time of this council term. The recommendations before you in respect of council confirm the existing position, which is that a meeting of all 39 members, or 34 from May, will be needed to determine all new strategies and policies, including any changes to those which represent a major departure from existing policy. It also includes any functions reserved by law to the council and any other function which the council explicitly chooses to reserve to itself. The big political decisions will continue to be discharged by you as a meeting of the council under these recommendations. The working group also considered that policy committees have a key role in supporting the work of council. As their name suggests, policy committees do exist to determine the application of and application of policy and maintain an oversight of the effectiveness of policy. Well, the working group has also recommended that these committees have the authority to review and amend policies other than where the threshold for major departures to policy would require council approval. As such, the terms of reference are set out in Appendix 1, and they detail what council will do and what policy committees will do if you agree these proposals this evening. Members, in my time here, there's been a lot of advice from me on the correct application of the council's rules and procedures. Not always appreciated or accepted, but the advice is given nonetheless. The working group has reflected on current practice in respect of questioning and speeches at meetings of the policy committees and has recommended that existing practice should be reflected in the rules of procedure for committee meetings, subject to the discretion of the chair. There's no recommendation for this to apply to meetings of the full council, otherwise we'll end up with a committee of 39, which I'm sure we all want to avoid. So just to be clear, you will be able to ask questions to officers and get responses from officers at policy committee meetings, which you do now. This proposal just incorporates that within the rules, but we're not doing that for council at this point in time. Recognising the burden on member time and officer workload, the working group has recommended that a new process be established for sharing information or briefing notes with members on particular topics that may have previously been submitted to councillors' committees for information. These items can and have taken up valuable debating time, and members felt that only those information reports required by law should be submitted to formal meetings in future. That won't remove the ability for members to request items to be brought to council, which you have under the existing rules, by way of a request for an extraordinary meeting to consider a motion or whatever it might be. But perhaps the biggest change arising from the working group's recommendations is the proposed establishment of a scrutiny committee. Some members will recall that the District Council previously had and disestablished a scrutiny committee a number of years ago. The working group considered there would be merit in re-establishing a scrutiny committee to provide a healthy, constructive challenge outside of the political atmosphere of council meetings. Such a recommendation represents a significant change to the political framework of the council, and if this is agreed tonight, then it will be necessary to deliver training to both members and officers on the way in which this new body will work and the relationships that they will have with it. The proposed terms of reference and rules for the scrutiny committee are set out in both Appendices 1 and 2. I'd just like to thank Councillor Hughes for his help in drafting those rules, because if he hadn't have done that, they may not be before you this evening. Members, you've previously asked the Independent Remuneration Panel to undertake a full review of allowances and expenses payable to members. Subject to your agreement to the recommendation in respect to the Scrutiny Committee tonight, it's recommended that the IRP be invited to review the role and remit of the Scrutiny Committee and bring forward proposals for special responsibility allowances associated with the committee. Finally, members, you'll recall that Council was advised to introduce general delegations to officers, which would ensure that decisions that we're already taking on a day-to-day basis on behalf of the authority were actually covered by the Constitution. The example that's previously been given to members is that there's currently no authority for officers to issue a press release under our existing delegations. So this needs to be put right, and the working group have recommended a set of general delegations that will ensure that the Chief Executive in his direct reports will have the necessary authority to deliver the day-to-day running of services. And I did say finally previously, Chairman, final point for me is I'm conscious that you were due to consider this report 2 months ago, and due to my absence I was not able to say that forward. So I know that there's been a meeting of the Constitution Working Group which was attended by every political group at that point in time, apart from the change that we'll refer to in the next report, and Councillor Hughes wasn't able to attend, but there was unanimous support from those members present on that day for the proposals that have been put forward before you this evening. I'm happy to clarify any points in the report, but obviously with the hour being late, members may wish to focus on debating the merits of the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to just step outside custom and practice for a moment. It's not a question, and it's not a recommendation, and I'm not going to move it just at this moment. This is a thank you. I was lucky enough to be chairing this working group, and we have been working extraordinarily hard and extraordinarily effectively. And I'd like to name 2 councillors, one Councillor Hughes, because his contribution towards, particularly to the ONS, was extraordinarily useful, as has just been mentioned, and also Councillor Ratcliffe, because his pragmatism and experience stopped us running off in a direction once where we might have tripped ourselves up. So thank you, members of the group, and I reserve the right to come back later, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Anybody? Sorry, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Councillor Purge and his colleague will be pleased that this is the last question I'll ever be able to ask at a council meeting. And I'm grateful for James for clarifying that it will be reserved to council for considering any other than minor amendments to existing policies. In the light of that clarification, could you please read out the amended recommendation 1, which, as it's set out in the report, doesn't actually say that. It says something different.
Chair, I haven't made any change to the recommendation. Recommendation 1, my view is that it covers what I've set out in introducing the report. Just for the benefit of those viewing who don't have a copy of the report in front of them, it confirms that the functions of the council be confirmed as all new strategies and policies, those matters reserved by law, and any matters that the council resolves to reserve to itself, as well as responsibility for the following, responsibility for the approval of the following specific strategies and policies, which I won't go on to list. But the point in that resolute or recommendation 1, any matters that the council resolves to reserve to itself, is any policy or strategy which represents a major departure. Now, if members want to make an amendment to that, that's absolutely fine to make it clearer, but my view is that it covers it off, and the wording provided in Appendix 1 of the report makes that also clear in the terms of reference for council going forward based on that recommendation. So I think it's probably covered, Chair, but if members want to propose an amendment to that effect, I won't object to that.
Chair, if I could add, if everyone is clear that that is what is meant by recommendation 1, and it doesn't mean that policy committees can amend existing policies or certainly make major amendments or significant amendments. If everyone's very clear about that and it's recorded somewhere that that is the case, I don't have a problem.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Gamble.
Just a question on voting, actually. Have we got to vote all the recommendations, or are you going through the recommendations in stages, or is it an all or nothing?
That's entirely up to the person who proposes. It may be that members pick and choose which ones they want to do. If it's moved on block, and members indicate that they want a recorded vote on a particular recommendation, then it could be done individually. But it's really down to whoever proposes it, so we'll see what comes forward.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite prepared to second this. It does seem to me that the working group did spend a great deal of time on this, and there was a flow to. I know for a fact of correspondence between you, James, and people outside that working party. So I think the nuances of this have been teased out, and it's up now to us to see that it is translated effectively. And if there are faults that appear, I'm sure that we can put them right. But in essence, of course, this is a template for the smooth running of the 2023 council. You know, we're the fag end, if I dare call us that, of the 19 cohort. And sometimes I feel that we're starting to run out of steam too, as well, for various reasons. I'd like to ask you a question, if I may, James. It's probably contained in the detail somewhere, but can you tell me what is the exact time period that is proposed between the policy committee decision and a call-in, because clearly this will also affect the execution of those decisions. What is that defined period?
Now, you've caught me out, Councillor Ratcliffe. It's been a long day, and I'll have to look at answer up. So perhaps I can come back to you if in a moment or two.
Well, let's hope it's not too long, but maybe you could look back at the previous operation of a scrutiny committee, which again, I have to say, despite some unease, if I can call it that, that I've detected in correspondence, my thoughts are that given the right will and dedication of a good scrutiny committee, it will work well. It's not just there to effect call-ins at every opportunity. It's there also to provide a base for review, if you like, and to re-examine procedures, etc. Anyway, yeah. So I say let's move it and move on.
Just to come back, Councillor Ratcliffe, I found the answer whilst you carried on there. So the decision of a policy committee will be published online ordinarily within 3 working days of the decision being made. Once that notice has been published, there'll be a period of 7 working days after its publication.
7 working days?
7 working days.
From the time of that decision?
Being published, yeah.
Well, if you don't mind me just very quickly coming back, are there not, can you not, or can it be envisaged that there may be decisions that require immediate execution and cannot be delayed awaiting a call-in?
Yeah, there are provisions in the Constitution around urgency. Yeah, so we would get an exemption from call-in.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thanks, Chair. Well, when the scrutiny committee was abandoned some years ago, I raised my objections to that because I believe very strongly that scrutiny is good for governance of any authority. And so when Councillor Flitter asked me, I think a year ago about now, if I would consider reintroducing it, I was more than happy to do so. I think one only has to look at page 179.2.3, the fact that in the 2 years since the Council served decision-making responsibility for itself, there have been 27 meetings of the Council. By way of comparison, most local authorities meet 8 times. So I also want to thank James. I appreciate Councillor Morley has commended Councillor Hughes and Ratcliffe quite rightly, although in actual fact scrutiny committees are dictated by law, so it's not just advice of a councillor. I do think that James ought to be thanked for this because it has resulted in a lot of hard work for him. We've had our ups and downs on the Constitution Working Group, but I think at the end of the day it's been very productive.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Just to come back on that, Chair, in fact the scrutiny committee is indeed set up in law, and the issue in drafting it was to ensure that it was the terms of reference for the scrutiny committee were absolutely in line with all the current law associated with scrutiny committees, which meant looking at several different laws and writing the terms of reference in accordance with that law. So it wasn't an opinion of a councillor, it was a legal position. So I'd beg that you withdraw your remark. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I will. Thank you.
Councillor Morley, I'll move back to yourself.
Well, thank you for allowing me to come back in, Chair. Yeah, in that case, having heard that and feeling reading the room, I would like to move it en bloc as it is. So it's now been moved. And I believe Councillor Ratcliffe, the innovator, has already seconded it.
Yes, I will go back to yourself, Councillor Ratcliffe. Do you wish to continue with seconding it? Okay. Anybody else wishing to make any more comments? Councillor Gamble.
And it's obviously going to, the scrutiny committee is obviously going to be voted through. But one of the things I would think is going to have to work a lot better then. I mean, I'm just thinking, if you're not on a policy committee yourself, how are we going to ensure that everyone not on a policy committee even knows a decision has been made within 7 days? Are we going to have to watch the meetings? We very rarely get the minutes within 7 days.
I'll come back in, Chair, on that point. So, members, we've just installed the modern Gov system, which generates automatic notifications. And whilst there have been some technical difficulties, I think, for some members this week, that system is designed to give you an automatic notification when a decision is published. All members will be registered for those decision notifications to come through. So within the 3 working days, there will be a page on the website with a link that we sent to you that sets out all the decisions taken by a policy committee. There'll be a link also to the form if you wanted to request a call in, so that that's easily accessible as well. So it's been designed in mind, that members will have to move relatively quickly to.
But we will always have a decision in writing. We won't have to sit there and watch YouTube to find out which decisions have been made.
No,
within
sadly, you
7
won't have
days.
to watch YouTube. That falls to me, unfortunately, a lot of the time. But yes, you will get a written record sent to you within 3 working days.
Okay.
Anybody else wishing to make any more comments? Councillor O'Brien. Sorry, I thought you were scratching your ear.
Strangely enough, I'm not in favour of a scrutiny committee. I was in a previous incarnation of the amendments to the Constitution, but now that it's clear that policy committees are only going to take decisions which are in accordance with policy, I have to say I can't really see the point of scrutinising a decision when we know it accords with the policy we previously approved. I just think it sounds really superfluous and is going to cause a lot of additional work for our officers at a time when we're trying to reduce their workload. I also think that it's, as others have said, the scrutiny committee has been, the terms of reference have been designed to comply with the legalities. Now, those legalities require that all decisions taken by officers are also open to challenge and have to be published and can't be executed until the period has elapsed. Now, I don't think that is making for an efficient way of working for our council. So I suspect that in times to come we may well find that the scrutiny committee is not being used in the way that we envisaged. I'll wait with interest to see that if that is the case.
I mean, all I can say in reply to Peter, whose views I respect profoundly, as he knows, is my experience in the past has been that the scrutiny committee provided me, as a member of the opposition at that time, along with Liberal Democrats too, with a vehicle to call in a decision that we again were significantly disturbed by. And in fact, that committee overturned that decision. So my experience has been for the scrutiny committee is that it can be an extremely effective vehicle for you to have a vehicle for dissent in the knowledge that your views collectively will be listened to and you can effect a change, as happened at the time. I mean, I'm going back, I don't know, 15 years or more ago, but, you know, at the time, we were very thankful that we got this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. Councillor Gamble.
But if I've read this right, this scrutiny committee isn't going to overturn decisions. It's only going to make recommendations to the policy committees, which they can choose or not choose to take on board. So, I mean, I'm afraid, I agree with Councillor O'Brien. I just think this is going to waste an awful lot of officer time and become basically a talking shop that won't achieve anything. And to have a new committee that doesn't achieve anything or have any real point just doesn't. I really don't see what this is going to bring to the table, what this is going to bring to the council. It'll be controlled. I mean, a lot of this will also completely rely on the goodwill of the majority group. The majority group will have the numbers on this committee. They will decide which things they will take on board and which ones they won't take on board. So it will be in the total control of the majority group by numbers. And so there's no even, and as you said in the talking about this, there'll only be one task and finish group. The scrutiny committee will only be able to deal with one item at a time. Therefore, unless it moves remarkably quickly, it could just very easily descend into just an inane thing to keep it occupied, a talking shop. I just really don't think this is going to really bring anything to this council that's actually a use of this council that's going to provide a useful part of the decision-making process.
Thank you, Councillor Gamble. Is there anybody else wishing to make any more comments? Councillor Buchan.
Thank you very much. The Vision Derbyshire thing, where is the Vision Derbyshire committee going to get its monitoring officer?
I can answer that. It's already got one.
Has it? And
Yeah.
who's paying them and where's it come from?
So I don't think anybody's paying for the monitoring officer. I think it's been added to the duties of the monitoring officer at Chesterfield Borough Council as it stands, unless there's been any changes since the last time I was involved in the conversation about that. But the monitoring officer at Chesterfield is leading on that.
And my second question on the Vision Derbyshire thing is, with only 4 out of 11 or 14 authorities, I can't remember, was it 11 authorities signing up, are we not, rather than finding a common purpose, we're finding a lowest common denominator? And do we really want to be involved?
Chair, I'm not sure what this has got to do with this agenda item. I believe that Vision Derbyshire is going to be touched upon on Thursday.
The terms of reference for the Vision Derbyshire committee are part of these recommendations. They're page 282.
Just to be clear, Council agreed in October last year to adopt the terms of reference for Vision Derbyshire. It was the council meeting on the 14th of October, so they've already been agreed.
Okay.
Yes, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Are you happy with that? You'd lost me when you went on to Vision Derbyshire. I thought
I'm
this
sorry,
is our
I've been-
scrutiny and
I've been rooting about
constitutional group.
in the background. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. Councillor Hughes, another comment?
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, I hear what's being said about the scrutiny committee, but one of the advantages of the scrutiny committee is to correct a deficit in the democracy associated with Vision Derbyshire, because the scrutiny committee itself can scrutinise the decisions that Vision Derbyshire has made, and therefore it provides councillors with, from any group, to look at and scrutinise those decisions, whereas the membership of Vision Derbyshire is only open to the lead group effectively.
Thank you. So with that, any more comments? It has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? That motion's been carried. Thank you. Item 11. Membership of political groups. James, thank you.
I will try and be very brief with this, Chair, because there's been a fair bit of correspondence on this particular subject in the last few weeks and months. So I'm submitting a report detailing the revised political balance of the Council that's in operation now, following Councillor Gamble's decision to become a member of the independent group. The report sets out the proposed seat entitlement for committees based on what I've generously described as the best fit option. The proposal before you doesn't meet the requirement of the principles set out in paragraph 1.3, which is the statutory revision around achieving balance to reflect the overall balance on all committees and on individual committees. I wrote to members earlier today by email to indicate I was proposing to change the size of the Planning Committee to 15 members and the Licensing and Appeals Committee to 13 members. The report as drafted has the opposite to that, so it would have been 15 on Licensing and Appeals and 13 on planning. My understanding is that all political groups are supportive of this, but we'll see how that plays out shortly. Just one reminder, this report will need to be agreed unanimously tonight. If it isn't agreed unanimously, then the existing seat allocation will continue to apply until such time as there is a further change in the political balance of the Council. One final point is that I've not received any nominations to seats, which is referred to in one of the recommendations. And given the Council's just approved the recommendation for a scrutiny committee, I'd like to change recommendation 3 to read the following: that authority be delegated to political group leaders to submit nominations for the revised committee seat entitlement and for the scrutiny committee, and for such nominations to be approved. That means that nominations can take effect immediately rather than waiting to the next council meeting to approve the memberships. So if members are happy with that, then I'm happy to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Questions?
Did you say he'd reverse the numbers on planning and
Yes, Councillor Ratcliffe. Yes, he's put planning to be in 15 members now, and licensing to be 13, to make the difference in balance. Is that a understanding with that? Yeah, and he's actually changed part of the recommendation. So because you've approved the first governance side of taking and letting that the political group leaders go back to form and nominate the members to go onto the scrutiny committee, so it can be done forthwith without coming back to a main meeting.
Thank you, Chair, and to the other seats that the independent group entitlement will have, just to make sure that that's given effect now rather than leaving it till September.
Yes, Atkins.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'm quite happy to move the recommendation as set out in the report, and of course recommendation 3 has been changed by James, which I agree with. So I'm just happy to move it, Chair.
Does that find a seconder? Oh, Councillor Hughes.
Yes, I'm pleased to second it. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wayne, would you like to speak on it?
I'll third it
then. Okay. Anybody else wishing to make any comments? Well, the one comment I would make is, again, thank you, James, because I dread to think how many times you've had to start crunching numbers around how many people are in which coloured group. Anyway, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. I'll say against. And abstentions? No. Unanimous, it's carried. Thank you. Item 12. Steve, performance management. You haven't gone to sleep yet.
Not quite. So, members, just to round off your evening, I hope this is a good news item. It's a list of all the, I suppose, the successes that the council's managed to achieve during the COVID times. And, you know, I think it's thanks to all your officers and yourselves for keeping it all going during that time. Thank you.
That was short and sweet. Anybody got any questions? Ooh. Proposer, please. Councillor Hobson.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose it. It is a good news story, Stephen. Thank you to everybody involved with all this hard work. And can I urge all councillors to look at the organisational update that's gone out and make some comments, because it's absolutely, it is good news, and we need to get that good news out, all the hard work that's been done.
Councillor Donnelly.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. Wish to make any more comments?
No wish to, thank you.
No. Anybody else wishing to make any comments? Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, I do want to make a comment in relation to the reference to the council housing programme. It's something I referred to before. If you look at the reference, it's on page 345, you'll see that it says, commence the programme to build new council homes to rent. Now, I raised this on a number of occasions and suggested that our programme, and it's the Director of Housing, who unfortunately isn't here, is a pain to say it is not a council house building programme. It is a council housing programme. But we continue to say in our published reports, this one here, and in fact when we approved the programme, that it is a council house building programme. Now, it can't be both. So I would be grateful if we could make it clear to ourselves whether it is a council house building programme or whether it is a council housing programme. And if it's a council housing programme, as opposed to what we originally approved as a building programme, can I suggest that this is an early item for review by the Scrutiny Committee?
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to make any comments? With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Unless there's something on the other side? No. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention and getting this work done. See you on Thursday.